In my mind, I had convinced myself that I was going to only have her for the little amount of time until the surgery, and if she passed away, I was preparing myself for that. And that sounds cruel and harsh and cold, but that was the reality. In 2017, my daughter with Down syndrome, Naomi, had open heart surgery. And in this video, I'm going to share with you, from a mother's perspective, what we went through emotionally, what happened. In fact, the surgery itself did not go perfect. It did not go smooth. There were a lot of issues that came up. In fact, later on, we found out that one of the surgeons had done some malpractice in the past, as well as at All Children's, which ended up resulting in closing down the Heart Institute at All Children's in Tampa. Now, I'm going to talk about that later. I'm going to link some articles in regards to that, but this is just a testimony to show, despite all of these crazy things that happened during this whole process, even after this process, she is alive, she is healthy, she is doing well. You would never know that she had open heart surgery. But first, before I get started, let me introduce you to my channel. My name is Leilani. This is our channel, Living with Eve, and I'm here to share with you our journey. We are a homeschool family of 4. My youngest daughter, like I said, has Down syndrome. We have chosen to homeschool her. So this is a channel that is a source for support and encouragement, and we even give you some ideas and tips. Now, when Naomi was born in 2016, she was diagnosed with Down syndrome. I have a whole video on that up in the links. I'll stick a link. But she was diagnosed with Down syndrome, and she was also diagnosed with an AV canal defect. That basically meant that there was a very large hole in her heart. It was 3-dimensional, went through both the right and left chambers, and affected both of the valves. It is actually a very common heart defect among kids that have Down syndrome. Around 15 to 20% of kids with Down syndrome have it, and it's easily treatable and fixable with surgery, with open heart surgery. Now, that's a really scary thing to hear as a parent, and as a parent, I had to really detach myself from that. That's pretty much the only way I survived. In my mind, I had convinced myself that I was going to only have her for the little amount of time until the surgery, and if she passed away, I was preparing myself for that. And that sounds cruel and harsh and cold, but that was the reality of what a parent has to go through when they're faced with the possibility of their child dying through surgery. Now, the surgeon reassured me, a lot of people reassured me, this is a very common surgery and it happens quite frequently, and the survival rate is really high. So here's the kicker. I had to continue to help care for her for 6 months before the surgery, which actually ended up being 7 months. I'll explain later. The symptoms included a faster heart rate, low oxygen levels in her blood, faster breathing, and she could potentially lose weight or just not gain weight that well. She had all of those symptoms. In fact, because of the hole, the blood that was pumped into the heart got mixed between the oxygenated and the unoxygenated blood. And when it did that, her heart had to pump faster, work harder to get the oxygen into the lungs she needed to thrive. If she wasn't getting enough of that oxygen, that's where the heavy breathing came in. And they actually gave me Lasix to give to her. That was supposed to get a lot of the water off the heart so the heart didn't have to work so much, which meant that it could work better, and her breathing was not as labored, and her weight gain was more productive. In fact, I did notice there were some times where I might have skipped some doses of the Lasix, and when I went in for my weekly checkup, her weight didn't improve. Now, a lot of babies that have gone through this had to get a GI tube, and I've heard that is a very common thing. Now, I was very dead set on nursing her. I didn't want to give her formula, and my pediatrician worked very, very closely with me on that, monitoring her weight, monitoring her just looking around, her activeness, and all those little things that doctors monitor to make sure you're doing the right thing as a mom. Naomi. Needless to say, I made sure she was drinking like all the time. I had both the pediatrician and cardiologist supporting me to continue nursing her. Needless to say, When we got around 6 months, she hadn't gained the weight that she needed to gain in order for us to have the surgery. So we did need to wait an extra month. Another reason was there really actually wasn't any room in the hospital, and it wasn't due to COVID. It was due to the fact that there were babies still in the hospital and there was no room for her. I mean, it was that simple. So fast forward to surgery day. We took her in, same kind of feelings every mom probably ever feels. We set her down, waited that morning for them to do the prep. I admired the fact that she had no scarring in the middle of her chest. I took pictures to remember that because I knew that I was never going to see an unscarred chest again. That was really hard for me. That part was hard for me because she still has a scar. It's not that bad, but there's still a scar there, and it still reminds me every day that she had to go through the surgery, which she's a survivor. And they took her into surgery around 6 o'clock. Of course, every mom hates that dramatic feeling of seeing your daughter being taken by surgeons, knowing that you may or may not ever see them again, down the hallway. And they're usually crying. She was 7 months old. She wasn't crying. She was like, I got this. That's, if you know Naomi, like, if she knew what was going on, she was like, I got this. I got this. Needless to say, I wanted my dad. My dad was with me, and my husband was with me, obviously, because it's his daughter, too. He works in the medical field, so he's very familiar with the whole process, sort of. I mean, he wasn't familiar with the process of heart surgery, but he was familiar with hospitals, and I think, he was strong. He was strong. And, he took me, he got my mind off of things, and the surgery actually lasted a little bit longer than we expected. That was a little bit scary because I expected it to be done within the time they gave me. Thankfully, they kept calling me from the hospital to give me updates. Later, after the surgery, we found out that they had put her on the bypass machine twice. The first surgery, he wasn't happy. The surgeon was not happy with the way he did it. So he went in again and fixed the mistakes that he felt that he had made, which is fine. But in the process of this, he had nicked one of her vessels for her lymph vessels, which resulted in her getting something called Kylo Thorax. I'm going to talk about the Kylo Thorax in just a little bit, but after they wheeled her, let's go back to after they wheeled her into the actual room, the surgeons came in, they greeted me. In fact, it wasn't just the one surgeon that I had met with. There was another mysterious surgeon who I didn't know who he was, and I thought it was kind of cool that she had two surgeons working on her because, more eyes, that's what I thought. I'm going to talk about that later as well. Anyway, wheeled her in the room. They had a nurse that was supposed to stay with her for at least the first 24 hours to monitor everything, and she was on every machine that you could possibly imagine. Of course, my husband was familiar with the machines. We checked him out. I wrote down the medication that she was on, which was like a ton. And of course, she laid there in a state of medicated coma so that she could begin the recovery process. Of course, she was incubated, and it's really difficult to see your 7-month-old in that condition. But it was needed and had to happen, or she wouldn't live past a certain age. It's a very scary, intimidating feeling knowing that machines and medication are keeping her alive at that moment. Eventually, she lost the incubation, and she was breathing on her own just fine. That was like a really, really big deal. Unfortunately, it did leave a little scar right here on her lip, which I still see today. The doctors did send me home to get some rest, and it wasn't home. I mean, I live in the area, but they also had the Ronald McDonald House, which was literally walking distance away from the hospital, and so that's where I stayed. And in fact, the bed was like ridiculously comfortable. Now, I did want to continue nursing her, and I knew that I had to pump, store, save that milk in order for her to have that after when she got out. And that was very special. A day, I don't know, it was like a day or two later that they handed her to me, and I got to nurse her for the first time after surgery, which actually didn't go so well. that's when we find out that she had Kylo Thorax. Now, Kylo Thorax is when, of course, they nicked one of the lymphatic vessels, and as a result, I don't know the whole process, but basically fluid starts to fill in the cavity wall, between the cavity wall and the lungs. And if you don't have tubes to pull out the fluid, of course, there's compression on the lungs and she can't breathe. One of the ways to stop that fluid from leaking, of course, you have to let it naturally heal. And you can't have any fat in the diet, which meant that I had to quit nursing her. And I'm a very, very, very stubborn person, because at that time, nursing her was the one way that I felt like I was doing something for her. It was the one way that I felt like I was connecting to her. And breaking that bond for a mom that connects with their child that way, that was tough. In the process of trying to heal her from Kylo Thorax, not to mention that the surgeon did come in and apologize to me, and he said, I'm sorry, it's not life-threatening, it's just really annoying, and I'm really sorry that she now has to stay here for an entire month. I'm serious. She had to stay in the hospital for an entire month for them to monitor and make sure that the fluid wasn't leaking into her chest cavity. To help her heal through this process, they actually put her on a 10-day fast. I mean, I'm talking no eating, no nursing, no formula. In fact, when they tried the no-fat formula for her, she vomited it up. It just didn't work for her. 10 days, no eating. She would just lay there in bed looking up at the ceiling for like hours on end, and she'd look around, and then she'd look back at me. And at that point, it became a habit of me waking up every morning, walking down there, sitting with her, pumping, reading a book, watching the doctors, and I monitored every little thing that they did. I wanted to know all the numbers. I was doing the calculations. In fact, there was one time that the doctor accidentally, not the doctor, but I think one of the nurse staff or something, kicked over the fluid container that fills, that the fluid drains into, and the numbers got sloshed around. And I recognized that. So when the actual doctor on call came in and he saw the numbers, oh, this side's coming out, we have a problem here, this is really inadequate, I was able to tell the doctor that, no, this is what happened, I witnessed it, this is not the case. So instead of him giving her a higher dose in medication, which is what he was going to do because of a nurse's mistake, I was able to kind of correct that. So lesson learned here, double check everything. Now, as they were weaning her back onto the milk, they wanted to give her that formula, which, like I said, she was throwing it up. Let's just be honest. So I had a lactation specialist come in, and I told her I wanted to, and I had been doing research too. I wanted to find a way that they were able to give her my milk without the fat. Found out that they had a centrifuge down in the, somewhere in the hospital. They were able to do that with the breast milk and pull the fat off of the top. She did fine. Now, this is something that I got to come in, do measurement. I mean, it became a whole study, a whole process, which was super, super cool because I got to be involved with that to just prove that, you can do that with breast milk and Kylo Thorax. So after the full month, after the 10-day fast, after getting her on, a regimen of like the centrifuged breast milk, I was able to take her home. She actually taught me how I could do it at home with, you should have seen my refrigerator. It was just a science experiment. Let's just put it that way. I had to keep her on that diet for another month. And after that month was over, after all the numbers were taken and we weaned her with the doctors helping me, weaned her back on 100% full fat breast milk and nursing, things were looking really good. And they were looking really good. In fact, there were no more issues after that. It was like the best moment of my life. I mean, we went back and checked. Now, they did tell me that she could possibly have surgery when she's, like an early teen, preteen, hitting puberty, that age. She might have to do that, but it doesn't look likely. And I'll tell you in a second. In 2018, something kind of scary did happen. I got a phone call from a friend of mine asking me who was the surgeon, Naomi's surgeon. Come to find out, there were some issues. The local newspaper had done an investigation on the heart institution of Johns Hopkins in our area because the mortality rate, the death rate, was pretty significant. In fact, 11 heart babies had died within an 18-month time span, and that is very rare. There was all this politics involved. I mean, basically people were resigning. The mystery doctor that was hired, he was actually hired from Australia, and he had a record of malpractice in Australia. But in America, he had actually at the hospital had left a suture needle in a child's heart, and it was found. Instead of going into detail, because I don't feel qualified to talk completely about this issue. Instead, I'm going to leave some links down in the description box below if you want to look at that a little more. But not to scare you, they still did a really good job on Naomi's heart. And I've been told by that from people outside of the Heart Institute. Of course, as a mom, when I heard this news, I spent a few days just very, very nervous. I contacted the cardiologist, which was outside of the Heart Institute, to find out what was going on, for some reassurance that it was okay, that everything was okay with my daughter. Of course, the Heart Institute in and of itself basically came apart. Now I'm sitting here going, if Naomi needs heart surgery again, where the heck am I going to go? And that's, was definitely on my mind. Which later we found out, actually this year, we found out really good news that the original surgeon that made that Heart Institute so famous and so great, who actually had resigned before any of this stuff was going on, he wasn't involved with any of this stuff, he came back. The point is, he came back. And he is like, they say that when he does surgery, it's like watching an artist paint. I don't think we could get any better than that, which reassures me that if Naomi does need surgery again, we have like the best of the best of the best now. And yay for that. And as you will know, she is strong, she is healthy, she is growing like a weed and doing awesome. I want to thank you guys again for watching to the end of this video, and if you would like, leave a comment down below, especially if you have had a child who has gone through any type of surgery and has had a beautiful outcome, a testimony to share with other moms to give them encouragement, or if you're having a child that's about to go through surgery, I would love to pray for you. And if anything encourage you, I love to hear these stories. I love engaging with you. And if you're new to our channel is all about encouraging, supporting, and even giving some ideas for you, the parent, if you have a special needs child or not. We are also a homeschool family, so we have a lot of ideas and encouragement there as well. Right now, I'm gonna stick some videos up around so you can see, and if you're interested in seeing another one of our videos, click on one of those links. And until then, I will see you in our next video. Bye.